Hello and welcome to OFFCUTS for November 2016. This one's going to be really pretty short. I normally log all of the films that I watch on a site called Letterboxd, and it kind of helps me, set it up as a diary. I just checked there again for this month, like, okay, what did I see? What could I talk about in this episode? And I've literally seen 4 films in this month, 2 of which were for the Criterion preview/reviews that I do, so they're like completely out of the question. So yeah, basically I'm not left with a huge amount to play with. Still a lot to talk about though in the small amount of films that I do have, but everything should basically be back to normal in the coming months. I just had a huge amount of work that basically meant I couldn't have any free time to watch films. Anyway, let's get straight into it. The first film is the Denis Villeneuve or Villeneuve, pronunciation is a fucking spook, basically. But his new science fiction film, I suppose, Arrival. I think this film kind of highlights the ineffectiveness of this kind of podcasty OFFCUTS format in some ways, because I could probably talk about this film for like 2 hours, maybe, but I really like to keep it brief here. This film is brilliant. I'm not sure if I'd consider it better than Sicario, but I mean, they're completely different beasts. I will say though that Arrival is the sort of film that I would typically prefer over something like Sicario, which is a more actiony thriller kind of almost spy film, whereas I absolutely love contemplative sci-fi, particularly like European intellectual sci-fi, like Stalker, Solaris, On the Silver Globe, basically anything Polish, Russian, so on and so forth. And this kind of falls into this category where I cannot believe that this film exists. I mean, it's a relatively high-budget American film with some like pretty big name actors like Forrest Whitaker, Amy Adams, Jeremy Renner, in what is probably the most atypical American science fiction film since 2001, maybe like Event Horizon, but that just falls into like horror in space, kind of like an Alien thing where Alien is like a slasher film in space. This is the least alien invasion film I've ever seen, and I absolutely love it for that. And it's kind of funny because the theater I was in had about 5 people, including 2 of my friends, and a bunch of like school kids came in at the back, and they left about 10 minutes into the film because I don't think they realized what they were getting into. They went, "Oh, Arrival, like the aliens have arrived, and it's got that hot chick in it. Yeah, let's watch it." And then they were like, "Oh, it's art." Time to leave. This is just such a wonderfully, slowly unfurling film. It takes its time, which I love, and I was really getting some very strong like Tarkovsky vibes, especially in the beginning. There's like the running of water, and it's almost this like weird kind of silent flashbacky thing going on, and it had that kind of atmosphere, that dreamy atmosphere of his. But then again, other elements of the film really reminded me of Inception, and I'm not a huge fan of Inception. I think it's like decent. I'm not sure really what it was. I guess it was kind of like the flashing from kind of dream and past to the now and then in the future and so on. Also, the soundtrack for this film is amazing. If you didn't get to see this in a theater, then I am severely disappointed in you. It is one of the only filmic experiences where on a sound design level you have to see it in a theater. I think the only other film I can think of, at least in recent history, would be like Mad Max Fury Road. This soundtrack here, it sounds like a Sun album. It's so, yet again, I can't believe that they basically had a drone album for the soundtrack of an American sci-fi film. And it's so, oh my god, how do they do it? How do they do it? It's so powerful and alien and very kind of foreboding in a more mysterious way than in a menacing sort of way. It's very unique. I've never heard any other film have this style of soundtrack, and there's even one point in it where it sounds like they're using like a synthesized didgeridoo, which, and I'm not sure if Americans are aware of this, but it's like an Aboriginal instrument that's basically a big tube. It makes a very bassy, very distinct sound, and I don't think I've ever heard it used in a soundtrack outside of Australian cinema. There's obviously some 2001 A Space Odyssey parallels here, especially with like the ships look like monoliths, and there's even a couple of shots that are kind of directly taken from 2001, and also it has that kind of overarching concept of mysterious alien entity helps humanity to evolve in some way. Anyway, there is just so much more I could say about this film, and I might actually put my thoughts more cohesively together when this film comes out on Blu-ray and I'm able to watch it again and kind of really pay attention to it and take notes and pause and stop and so on and so forth. But for now, I'm going to leave it here. I would highly recommend seeing this if you haven't already. Overall, this is an 85 out of 100 for me. Next up is Doctor Strange. Yeah, now I'm talking about cape shit films. I'm finally selling my soul to Disney. I don't think I've seen a Marvel superhero film in over a year. Honestly, I can't actually think of the last one I saw. But yeah, Doctor Strange, it was decent. Kind of surprisingly, I don't know, yet again, I don't really care. The only thing I thought was interesting in it going into it was that I heard it was trippy as fuck. I do like me some trippy things, but also the fact that it had bald, kind of Asian Tilda Swinton in it, which was, new. I'm not an enormous fan of Benedict Cucumber Cabbage Patch or whatever his fucking name is. I guess he's okay. I kind of like him in Sherlock, but I don't know. He seems very one note from what I've seen him in, and he kind of plays the same autistic, hyper intelligent character here that he does there. He's just a little less autistic. I thought the visual design here was very cool. It isn't just like, whoa, it's like psychedelic, man, but it actually had some like serious care and artistry put into it, which for me is one of the main things when seeing these Marvel films. I hate films that feel commercial and mass-produced. And that's kind of what Marvel has done from what I've seen, is they kind of get into this very soft, whoa, we're so wacky and we're telling jokes and yeah, fuck you. And they've kind of settled into this mediocre trash, and these films are kind of mass-produced now, but it is always nice to see when someone actually cares about their product. If there's one good thing I can say about Batman vs Superman, it is that Zack Snyder actually seems to care, however misguided he is about that film or trying to make Superman a gritty edgelord, whatever the fuck. He actually has like a visual style and a film style, and I gotta commend him for that, no matter how much I dislike all of his films. But yeah, no, it actually seemed like, yet again, people cared, and you know, you gotta give points to that now. Wow, I love that this filmmaker actually cared about their film and didn't just want money. God, I love capitalist art. Why can't we just go back to the good old communist days in Russia where they had great films? Yeah. Like always, I fucking hate the quipping in these films. I feel like you could halve it, and I mean, it just, all it does is just reduce dramatic tension. How can I take anything seriously if everyone thinks it's a joke? If it was meant to be this kind of like, hey, we're going on a light adventure and we're having fun with it, then why are all like the threats these world-ending disasters that are gonna destroy humanity? It's such a contrast, and I get that the bulk of the jokes come from things are super serious and then there's levity and the character making like a dumb fart joke or something dumb like that, but it also just serves to undermine dramatic tension. I don't know, this is a complaint I hear a lot, and I basically fully agree with it. Obviously, the flip side of that is films that are no fun at all, like Batman vs Superman, but then again, that's like meant to be serious, so at least I can commend it on that. So that's probably my least favorite aspect of this film by quite a bit. Also, I love the use of Pink Floyd's Astronomy Divine, and I'm pretty sure only one other person in the theater kind of was like, oh my god, they're playing it. It's really cool to use early Floyd. Piper at the Gates of Dawn and Saucer Full of Secrets are so fucking underrated, it is unreal. I actually really like the ending of this film, though. I was talking about like good ways to do comedy and not going into any spoilers. Actually works as like a funny concept for a scene. It isn't just we are in a scene and now we're making jokes. It's the fact that the scene is inherently funny and jokey. I don't know, it seems like they actually put effort into the joke there, and it kind of works for his character and so on and so forth. So I really like that ending. It's like fantastically camp as well. Sadly, not a huge amount to say about like Mads Mikkelsen in this film. I fucking love him as an actor. I think I mentioned before that Hannibal is one of my favorite shows, and his performance in that is just amazing. It's so subtle and just, oh, I love it. He's also great in everything else he's in, like all the Nicholas Winding Refn films he's in. He doesn't have a lot of room to shine here. I'm kind of not sure why he's here. He could basically be replaced with anyone else and it wouldn't make a difference at all, which is a shame. Tilda Swinton is really good, actually. She delivers it like a really fantastic performance. I really like her character. In the little that we see her, she's very interesting. Yeah, that's it. Overall, it's like a 66 out of 100, which is a lot higher than I thought it would be. I actually enjoyed this to some degree. Now, because I've only seen 4 films for this entire month, I'm going to talk about 2 episodes of Black Mirror, because they're almost films. In fact, one of them, Hated in the Nation, is feature length. Anyway, first episode, Shut Up and Dance. I love this. This is probably my favorite, premise for a Black Mirror episode. It's very, very real. A little too real. The issue I kind of have with a few of these other episodes... first of all, let's introduce Black Mirror. If you don't know what Black Mirror is, recently the 3rd season got a Netflix release, but it had 2 other seasons before. It's this, British near-future sci-fi kind of series that deals primarily with, issues of technology or, social media, and so on and so forth. And yeah, it is a bit overdone in some parts, holy shit, the internet, and a normie's perspective on what that is, but for the most part, it is really, really well made, very well written, very well conceived, so on and so forth. And in being the 3rd season, I was a little bit worried because it's American Netflix is funding this, and I'm are they going to Americanize this and dumb it down? And on that point, this just feels like an actual episode of British TV. It's kind of shot in that British TV way. I'm not sure how to describe this. I absolutely love the moral ambiguity of this series, but also this episode in particular. The way that your perspectives change on certain characters as things are revealed is very, very interesting and very well done. Not to go into spoilers, but I actually didn't see the twist coming in this episode. I knew that there was fuckery about, but I didn't pick the specifics of the twist, and it actually did catch me by surprise, which is in itself surprising. Yet again, mentioning music here, this is kind of strange, but I love the use of the Radiohead song Exit Music for a Film. It's my favorite track off of OK Computer, and it is yet again, like Astronomy Divine, super fucking underrated. I feel like it could have been used a little better, a little more impactfully, but they basically used it in the way it's designed to be used. I mean, the song is literally called Exit Music for a Film, and it plays at the end of this episode, of course. But besides that, there's not really much more I can go into this without spoiling it or kind of giving away anything. You basically want to go into this blind. Definitely worth a watch. I think it's only an hour long, or 45 minutes even. I'm not going to score this because it's a TV episode and I haven't really thought about exactly how I would go about doing this, but it is very good and I would highly recommend watching it. Next up, as I mentioned earlier, is Hated in the Nation. Now, this is probably my favorite Black Mirror episode out of any of them, and it is feature length, e.g. it is an hour and a half long, which is crazy. I like the pig fucking episode more, and to those of you who haven't seen the series, that's going to sound just a little bit weird, but I can't remember the name of that episode. I really like the premise and execution there, and I think the premise is slightly better, but Hated in the Nation is just on some other level. For one, the budget is significantly bigger, but it doesn't feel as low budget as it probably is. If they were given this budget and separately tasked to shoot this as a feature film, it would be easily able to pass as one. It's an almost perfect example of scarcity in resources, e.g. money, forcing artists to have to improvise and actually rely on a good script and good acting and so on and so forth, and use CGI very sparingly, only for the sake of progressing the plot. And that's basically what they do here. It's also one of the only other cases in Black Mirror where whoa, it's technology, social media, it doesn't really feel forced or dumbed down. There is one female character who fits into that, I'm a super elite computer hacker. But most of the hacking, jargon and computer jargon she uses, it isn't too bad. Basically, it doesn't pull an NCIS where, you have 2 people hacking a computer and they're we have to both get on the keyboard, and then they decide to turn the monitor off to stop the hacker. So yeah, it's definitely not at that level. Yet again, the issue here is more of a moral one rather than, whoa, technology, it's bad, or, so on and so forth. It's a moral issue that just happens to be related to technology, and that's basically my favorite aspect of the series, is when it doesn't shove that down your throat. You're very aware of it, but it's just using these technological concepts to base its story around, rather than relying on them explicitly as a crutch. This episode kind of starts out in this very, very small scene. It's just this little murder case that these policemen are getting involved with, and then it just branches out into something you could never have conceived from this tiny little start, and I really, really like that sensation that gives. Obviously, it's not perfect. Some of the CGI and action here is terrible, and some of the dialogue is just a little bit too expositional, but besides that, would highly recommend checking out. I mean, you can basically watch this just as a film. And that concludes the November Offcuts. Hopefully the next months I'll have better / more film picks to talk about, though I feel like the picks that I did have had a fair amount to talk about, especially with Arrival, which is great. Anyway, that's it. Click on these, like this video, and comment on it 10 times because the algorithm's fucked and it favors that. Yeah. Ciao.